Let's take a look at how we can fire an event from .NET code and handle it in JavaScript code. I've got a simple UI here in XAML. So here's my simple UI. I just have a button that says click me. Let's handle the event on that. Click equals on click. Let's go into our code and write an event handler for that very quickly. We'll just say on click. And so now we're handling a .NET event in .NET code. Let's go and create a scriptable type. We did this in a previous video, but here we're looking at it from a slightly different mechanism. So let's add a new class here. I'm going to call this class myScriptAbleObject.c#, and I'm going to say that this object is a scriptable type. And on that I'm going to add an event. Now what I want to do is pass across to JavaScript a list of items. So let's create an item class. So we'll have a class. We'll call this item, and on an item let's have a name, and let's have some kind of integer value. Let's just have a value, and a name and a value, and let's make both of these scriptable types. And let's make this a scriptable member. Let's just go and do that. So this can now be used from JavaScript. Let's also make a new event type. So let's say we'll have another class. We'll call it items event args. We'll derive it from event args, and we'll make it scriptable once again. And onto that let's just put some property which is perhaps an array of items. So we'll say item, and let's call that items, and we'll make that a scriptable member again. So we have an item with a name and a value, we have a items event args, and then we have my scriptable object. So my scriptable object here, what we'll do is we'll say there is a public event. It's an event handler of type items event args, and we'll call that items available, something like that. And then onto the scriptable object let's just add a method. So we'll have public void fire items available. It'll take an array of item, let's say items, and it'll say if items available is not equal to null, then we'll fire items available with a from this with a new items available event args, and on that we'll simply put the one property of items set to the parameter that were passed. So far we've done nothing that's not just core.NET. We've created an event of a particular type, and we've just said that things are scriptable, and finally let's make that event down there scriptable. Notice I'm going to call this from .NET code, so I don't need to make that scriptable. Alright, so when our page first fires up over here, what I want to do is define myself. So let's just say at load time for this page, let's say on page loaded. What we'll do is we'll create ourselves one of those scriptable objects. So I'm going to have this as a member variable. Let's call it scriptable object, and we'll just say scriptable object equals new scriptable object, and like we did in a previous video we'll say HTML page dot register scriptable object, register scriptable object, saying my object and the scriptable object we've got. So what this means is that we talk to the HTML and the JavaScript engine and we say create a scriptable object, call it this, and here is the instance. We're now making this thing available so that JavaScript code can come along and sync itself up to this event here called items available. Okay, so let's go and have a look at what we can do in the JavaScript code. Let's pop over to our ASPX file, and we have a Silverlight control called XAML1 at the moment. Let's change this so it's only 50% high, and let's add a button in here. We'll call input is a button, we'll say value equals register, and we'll say on click equals on click. And then we'll come and write a little bit of script up here, so we'll just go ahead and say script, so JavaScript, and write a function in there on click, and we'll just handle this. So what we're going to do is get hold of this XAML control. So let's say get on that XAML1 control. It has a property called content, and we just registered my object, which is one of these scriptable objects. So we can say my object dot, now this has an event on it which we know is called which we know is called items available. So we can say items available, let's say equals on items available. Let's write another function, on items available, and that's going to take a sender and some args. And let's put an alert in there for the minute saying hello, just to see if that's happening at all right now. Let's just go back finally to our XAML page and our code behind it. So what we're going to do is when somebody clicks the button in Silverlight, we'll say scriptable object dot fire items available, and at the moment we'll pass null and see how we get on with that. Let's go and build. Let's go press F5. We should get our Silverlight button. Let's register from the HTML side. Let's click from the Silverlight side, and we can see we're getting our alert. So we are generating an event in Silverlight and picking it up in JavaScript. So let's go back to our JavaScript, and what we can do, instead of just putting out a hello here, let's put another div on the page. So below this, let's have another div. We'll say ID equals results, something like that. And let's try and just generate an HTML table in there from the results that we get in here. So let's declare ourselves a string builder. Let's say new sys.stringbuilder. And let's build the basics of a table. So we'll say sb.append. Let's have table. At the end of all this, let's have slash table. And we also will then want to say, want to get, what did we call our thing? We called it results. Inner HTML is going to be sb.toString at the end of all this. We'll be able to just loop around and say for I equals 0, I is less than. We're going to use the args that come in. So we have args. We know that has a property called items. We know it's some kind of array. Let's just increment through that. Let's append a row to that table. Let's close off that row afterwards. And let's append string.format, and we'll use table cell 0 table cell, and we want to pass into that args.items I dot, we had name, and then we also had the similar thing really, append string.format. Let's put it in another args.items I dot. I think we also had value. Let's see if we can save that and maybe give it a try. And I've just realized, of course, that we aren't actually passing anything across into this yet, so let's make sure that when we fire that event we create some sales items, because at the moment we're not. So let's just create a hard-coded array. Let's say new item, and in there let's have a new item. Oops. Name equals 1, value equals 10. Let's have another one. Name equals 2, value equals 20. Last one. Name equals 3, value equals 30, something like that. So there's our little table of items. Let's press F5. Run this up inside of IE. Let's click on the HTML button to register for the event. Let's click on the Silverlight button. Oops, looks like we made a bit of a mistake. Let's see what we did in our aspects page. We're missing a set of quotes around that results. Let's go and press F5 again. Once again, let's go and register for the event from HTML. Let's click, and you can see we get a little table generated in HTML. So we managed to get JavaScript to register for a .NET event. We get a complex type coming across on that event, and then we're dumping it out as an HTML table. Very simple to do with the interoperability between Silverlight and the surrounding HTML page.